right now. All right, so let's just start at the very beginning, how you got involved in sport, how the family dynamic that you were in pushed you into the sporting atmosphere, and where it went from there.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for having me. First of all, um, so I really got into the sporting world. I mean, from the time I was a kid, it was just a part of life, and we were always at a local Optimist park with my family. Like it was, Monday through Friday, Saturdays, Friday nights was like the big deal because that's when like the older kids played, and so we were just like we were Saturdays we spent the whole day there. So you just were always in that arena, like always around athletes and coaches and on the sidelines. And my dad was a coach and my brother played and I was a cheerleader. Then I was a cheerleading coach. And so we were just sort of always, whether it was that sport or something else, always around it. And, at that time, and I think it still exists today too, but particularly around that time, it was very common for, to hear things like, oh, don't be soft, don't be weak, don't cry, that kind of stuff that I'm sort of downplaying right now. But when as a super sensitive kid who had all these emotions, it was sort of, I kind of struggled with that tough love a little bit. But I loved being around the sports. I loved the excitement. I loved the energy. You can't duplicate that anywhere else. Like it's just impossible. So just really being a part of that was super super awesome. And the coaching part was always my favorite. Like even when my dad was coaching, I would kind of sneak in on the sidelines and try and help. So
So, how do you think that that kind of tough love from a very early age made you into the kind of teacher and coach that you ended up being?
yeah, so I believe in tough love to an extent. I do because I think that especially when you're someone who's emotional, you have to learn how to not let that control you. And so that's what I mean. But yeah, so it really sort of has inspired me to as I've gone through my own life to learn about how do we make these two things fit. And I think a lot in sports we're still trying to figure out how do you make this idea of mental toughness and mental wellness work together, because there's still like this school of thought, it seems, that you're either mentally tough or you're working on your mental health. Like there's no like bridging that gap. And so that's been like a huge part of my journey is learning that and then helping others learn that as well.
So, I actually had a guest on a couple weeks ago who was talking about the difference between what we attribute mental toughness to be and
Uh-huh.
also like how we can kind of redefine it into its individual parts. How do you think that we can break down mental toughness to make it less of an umbrella term and more of an individual checklist?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about it in that way before, but I would say that I think first and foremost that discipline is a part of it. So whether that discipline is rest and self-care or the discipline to focus on and visualize on what it is that you want to do and want to achieve, knowing that the game is, as we say, 90% mental, giving yourself the opportunity to focus on that. I don't really, I'd have to think about the actual items on a checklist for that one. But I think those are the kind of things that you want to look at, and just sort of approaching about how um mental mental health is not a weakness, and also that it should just be like a normal part of conversation, a normal thing that we adopt, because really mental health is wellness, just like physical wellness. Mental illness is when you're struggling with things like depression and all these other things. But so people think mental health and they think, oh, there's something wrong, and there's sort of like this stigma around that term. And I think we have to like redefine that, and then we can use that much more easier to create that checklist for mental toughness, where you're still able to get in the zone, play your game, visualize, be competitive, be relentless, have that Mamba mentality, if you will, but also make room for self-care and self-development, rest, all those things.
So, how did you get into this athlete mental health space?
Yeah, so, yeah, I went through mental health issues when I was a teenager and even into my 20s, in college and beyond. I battled with depression and anxiety. And when I decided to get certified as a coach, it was around 2015. And when I decided to get certified as a coach, there was all this talk of, oh, you got to pick a niche, you got to pick a niche, you got to whatever. So I was like playing with all these ideas. I'm like, who can I really help? Who can I really serve? And nothing was really clicking for me. And it took a couple years actually. And around 2018, I think it was, um, I was just sort of sitting back and reflecting on the things that impacted my life the most. And growing up, that was being around sports, because to this day, probably the most favorite thing that I ever did in my life was be a coach, right? And cheerleading and just be in that space. I've never duplicated that experience since then, that sort of gratification. And that's why I became a coach in the first place. So I thought about that. And then I was thinking about my own struggles with mental health and my own spiritual mind, body, soul journey along with that, and these values that I learned growing up about, again, don't be tough, don't be weak, stop crying, don't be a baby, walk it off, not no matter what was going on with you. So and I just sort of looked at those two things and I thought, wow, there's got to be other people that have struggled like I do, that grew up in this space that I did, that need to hear this and rewire their brain and their thought process and their beliefs the way that I had to.
So
So
how do
that's
you think
essentially
that
what I meant.
how do you think that your dad being a coach impacted the way that you viewed success?
um I don't know that it did, to be honest with
Okay.
you. I think that the I don't know, I can't like pinpoint how I view who influenced how I view success. There's multiple layers to that, but definitely my dad as a coach taught me. My dad was always a really passionate coach, and he took an interest in all of the players, and he would, you know, go and put his arm around a kid and kind of explain things to them. He was a story that he told me. There was a kid who was like, I think it was like, I don't know what grade it was in, but he couldn't read. And my dad found this out and went to great lengths to get this child a tutor to get him to start to read. So like those types of things of just always having that compassion wrapped in with that mental toughness and that tough love and all these other walk it off things. And my mom too, she's same thing. My family, that's just how we were. My grandma was the same way. Very, very, very compassionate and giving. And I think those are the things that help me learn to do, not just chase money, in other words, like be good, contribute, be of service. So that to me, like that's what, if you're looking at success and you're looking at purpose, it's sort of a combination of those factors.
Yeah. So let's talk about your education background and how that played into what you're doing now.
Well, I actually did not study mental health in school or psychology or anything like that. I went to Florida State. I double majored in public relations and in creative writing, and I also earned a minor in Spanish. And I still work, in the marketing field today, but the good thing is that it prepared me to learn how to communicate better. So I think, and learning a different style of writing too than I did. Like, so creative writing and PR, I would like really struggle because those are two extremely different types of writing disciplines. And so it was like super difficult for me to kind of like balance out the two. But I'm glad that I did, because it's sort of, it helps me sort of like think differently. And then I think as a coach, career and business and branding yourself, especially in today's social media era, all become a part of the picture and a part of the conversation. So I will say in that regard, that was super helpful.
So at what point in your life did you say this mental health space needs to be talked about more and I can be the one to help these youth athletes out in that space?
Yeah, I think it was the same thing when I was saying before, when I was sort of reflecting. Um, my personal mantra is that pain leads you to your purpose. And so, again, reflecting on my experiences, as I encourage everybody to do, um, and it's something too that, like, even when I'm working with athletes on identity after sports and transition and all that, there's a lot of reflection that has to go on there, because things that you may not even think of, like right now as an adult, if you kind of look back, or you kind of look at your life and these are like the pivotal things. Oh, okay, like this is something that maybe is an interest that can lead me to the next point. So yeah, so I think that was around the point that I was like, I need to talk about this. Soon after, actually, I started the blog is when we heard the DeMar DeRozan Players Tribune came out. Then it was the Kevin Love one, which just blew up. And then you had Ben Gordon wrote this incredible piece for Players Tribune, and and slowly more and more people have been having this conversation. So it's been cool to watch that happen.
Have you seen what's happening with Naomi Osaka?
Yes.
How do you think that that is going to impact the tennis community? Because obviously, we have basketball players coming out, we have baseball players coming out, we have some soccer players coming out, but I think Naomi is kind of the first one that's talking specifically about her relationship with mental health and the media.
Yes, there are tennis players who have come forward to talk about their mental health experience before that, and who have been open about the fact that they have a mental health coach. There's a player, actually, let me pull up her name right here because I can't think of it. Oof. Oh, I cannot pronounce her name because she's Polish, but it's like Iga Swiatek. I totally butchered that. But she has a full-time mental health coach. She's a big-time tennis pro, and she has a full-time mental health coach. It's not even like, oh, I book a session when I can. No, no, no. This coach like travels with her and the whole thing. So, and she started talking about that in February. So I think, I haven't researched and looked back, but I'm sure there have been people who have started to have these conversations. And so I don't know, I'll be really honest with you. I don't know the tennis community extremely well. So I cannot say and answer how that's going to affect that specific community. But I do think that it opens up, again, a space for people to own their truth. So I think that's a really good thing, because even if it's just some kid playing tennis, if they see that she's doing that, maybe they will feel more comfortable saying, you know what, I'm not having the great day, or I'm struggling with this, or I get really uncomfortable in these type of situations, and at least vocalizing that.
So in our pre-interview, you talked about what goes into creating a safe space for the athletes that you consult with.
Right.
What are some of those things that we can implement in our daily lives to make the conversation surrounding mental health easier to conceptualize?
Yeah. So I think there's really different perspectives in this answer, because you have the perspective from the athlete or the individual who needs a safe space. You have this perspective as a loved one or a coach or whomever who might be in a position to provide the safe space. So I think one of the top things that we always talk about with that is creating a space of trust. And I heard someone say a safe space is a consistent space. And that's in large part because they've created this trust, not just through, hey, yeah, you can come to me if you need something, but actually having the action of being there when someone comes to you, but also when somebody comes to you, not judging them, allowing them to just speak their piece, to say what's on their mind, not trying to necessarily quote unquote fix their situation, but more be a support system. And if they need more help, being like, hey, like I can actually, I'm happy to, to be by your side as you go through this. And again, just not judging, because you know how it feels like when you have an emotion or you feel some way about something and somebody's like, they get frustrated with you. Why do you feel that way? Da 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 da. And that doesn't feel good. Oh, you shouldn't take it that way, but that's still my experience. So I think that safe space is trust, and that's built through, again, action, consistency, validation, non-judgment. Those are the types of things that we look for in being safe.
So let's break it down a little bit into its pieces, like you were talking about. So, say I'm the athlete.
Mhm.
What can my teammates do to create a safe space so that I can come to them and talk about what I'm doing? I mean, is the onus on them to reach out to me and say if there's anything that you need to talk about, I'm here, or are there actions that I can take that don't require words that will create that kind of atmosphere for them?
I think both. I think if you're saying to somebody, I'm just thinking like real life examples. If you're saying to somebody, hey, yeah, you can come to me, but on social media, you're posting like derogatory things. You're saying that this athlete is a baby because blah, blah, whatever the reason is. It doesn't mean it has to do anything with mental health. But if you're saying they're acting like a baby, or I mean, you get what I'm saying? So like if you're saying, oh yeah, you can come to me, but your actions are actually showing that that maybe it's not so safe, that person might not choose to come to you. Now everybody cannot be every single person's safe space, right? And I still believe in being authentic, and you can't fake that authenticity, and some people you're going to vibe with and some people you're not going to vibe with. So that's part of it, is just sort of building those relationships. And when you're closer with somebody, just check in on them. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Just check, hey, like, how you doing today? How you feeling today? Good. All right, cool. Hey, if anything's ever going through, got some struggles, I'm here to listen. That's it. That's it. And you don't have to be that for everybody, right? And you don't have to not, express opinions. I think we kind of get caught up in that too. But again, just if that's who you're choosing to be to somebody, just make sure that those align, like your words and your actions, and that vibe, because people will pick up on that.
And then from a parental standpoint, if you see signs that your child is looking for a safe space, how can you take the first step and say, I don't know what you're going through, but I want to understand?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. And I think even before, I think the thing with safe spaces, mental health, all these different things that we're talking about is not waiting until there's a problem. I think it's creating a culture in your home, in your locker room, wherever it might be, from the beginning, that um hey, you know what, like, emotions are normal, things get tough. I want you to know that you can speak up and talk to me. It won't change my opinion of you. And just being consistent in that message, because if you are consistent in that message, when that person doesn't feel right, and you ask them a question like, hey, like, something seems up with you, they'll probably answer a little bit more honestly than if that conversation never happened and all you ever told them was, hey, toughen up, whatever. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's this total balance that, yes, sometimes you do have to be mentally tough, and we don't want our emotions to overrun us, right? But then at the same time, like, we want to create a space where somebody feels, safe enough to, hey, I'm going through a hard time right now. Can I at least just chat with you about it? So it's kind of like creating that balance, which I don't necessarily know that there's a perfect formula for that, but practicing things like mindfulness, where that allow you to be in the present moment, allow you to be aware, just sort of, it's those are so many different keys to that. But yeah, I definitely think that there's a balance to both. Just saying to somebody, toughen up and get over it, is not the best. But if you're that person, you feel that way, and that's just sort of how you feel life, because you're not a super emotional person. Imagine that you still have emotions. You're still going to have good days. You're still going to have bad days. So being able to listen to somebody and just not judge them, be like, hey, you know what? Like, I get it. I understand how you feel. I'm here to listen. Tell me more. I think that's a key.
So let's talk about how those kind of conversations translate into the work that you're doing now with the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I am a mental health coach and contributor to the pro I'm sorry, the Hall of Fame Behavioral Health Program, which is an affiliate of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So that's important that I mention that. So that is something where I am. available as a coach, but I'm also helping them in their mission to destigmatize some of these things, to get the word out, to be a voice, to help people through contributing to their website. I write actually all of their blog content. So as of right now, so that's a space that I'm able to help on a larger scale, help them carry out their mission of reaching not just Hall of Famers and not just former pro athletes, but their families, their loved ones, and people who maybe up to this point have felt invalidated or felt like they didn't have a place to go, or felt they didn't have the proper resources. And that's what this program serves as. So I'm really excited to be a small part of that.
So, knowing the history that mental health has in football and mental illness has in football, what do you think are some of the objectives of the behavioral health program?
Yeah, so I think again, it's about creating comprehensive solutions. It's about being a place where somebody can make a phone call to the concierge line and get the help that they need, and we're and again trying to spread the word about that so that and they have a variety of payment options as well. So it's not like people might think, oh, it might be inaccessible. It might not be. There might be a program or a foundation that can help pay for some of these services, or at least, you know, point them in the right direction. So I think that that's like an important distinction here in what they're doing. It's not just, oh, hey, we're working with Hall of Fame athletes and former retired pro athletes. It's, we want to reach all those different levels, and helping athletes get the care that they need and just destigmatize mental health, but by providing accessible and widespread services.
Yeah. So, how can we move away from athletes not showing emotion? I mean,
I don't know that they can.
what kind
I
of
don't know that they can.
programs can coaches implement on their individual teams to make that conversation more accessible to their athletes?
I think a lot of the programs are doing a good job of getting uh, psychiatrists and mental health counselors and those types of people into their organization. So I think they're doing a great job of starting to do that. I don't know that this necessarily falls on the shoulders of a head coach directly, because the head coach can't be the head coach and the therapist at the same time, right? Because you're just not trained in those fields. So I mean, the head coach can make it okay, or any of the coaching staff or teammates or whomever can make it okay to, hey, you got an issue. I understand it. This is who you need to go to. So I think that they are doing better at providing resources, in other words, than we have in the past. Um, so I will say that.
So, let's talk about you specifically. How did you create the brand that you have now and the playbook that you've published?
Yeah. So the book, it became, I have it right here actually. I published it last May. And basically what was happening is I was writing these blog articles, and then I felt like they were just sort of sitting there, and I was like, man, I could really put a bunch of these together and do something more with this so that it's more of a comprehensive guide for people. And so that's how the book was really born. And there's worksheets and exercises and all kinds of things in here to really help people get comfortable with their emotions, to help them realize they're humans, to make it okay, to be a human, to say, okay, I have emotions, and that's all right. And now what do I do with that? So that's really the purpose of writing that book. And I think that um, it's a big part of you know what I'm going to say? It's not really so much a brand as it is. Again, this is a passion project for me. It's not something, oh, like this is trending, let me hop on the train. I mean, this is something, that I've been doing for a little while. And I guess I just really feel passionate about helping that population, again, growing up in it, understanding it a little bit more, and using my experience to be of service. And so it's not so much a brand as it is, again, a passion.
Yeah. So how do you think that your teaching differs between current athletes and the former athlete population and the struggles that they're individually going through?
Yeah, so remember we talked about this a little bit before, and there are some differences in terms of some of the generic um, experiences that a current athlete and a former athlete might be going through, just because some are in the middle of still their career, some are making that transition. But always, it to me, this is not about generalizing where you are and where you should be. It's huge to meet the person where they are. So no matter where they are in their life, sports or out of sports, right? Personal life, locker room, whatever it might be, whatever it is that they need to walk through and move forward with, because that's a big distinction in coaching. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, I don't practice any of these things, right? So we don't look at the past in coaching. We're looking at where are you at right now and how do we move forward. And for those athletes, again, no matter where they are, this is about coming into it as a coach and being completely open to whatever they're telling me that their needs are. So it's completely individualized. I don't like to say, in other words, oh yeah, current athletes we work on this and pro athletes we only work on that. It's not like that at all. It's totally individualized to whatever that person has going on, whether it's something going on in their relationship or something has to do with their sports and their career.
So how does the behavioral health program distinguish between the anguishes of being a current athlete versus being a former athlete and seeking their services?
So that I can only speak very loosely on. Remember, I'm
Right.
not like involved. I wasn't involved in creating it. I'm not
Right.
involved in operating it. Like I don't have that close of involvement. But
Right.
we do talk about things. Again, I've written articles about athlete transition, about vulnerability. So it's about creating content around that, and whether it's a current athlete or a former athlete that reads it, we hope that it's helpful and that it inspires them to um, if they need help to make that phone call, but if they need help later, to make it okay then to make that phone call. Or if they hear somebody else, hey, like this is who, try calling these people, or whatever the circumstance may be.
So what do you think that how will the mental health in sport industry change once we have sports psychologists or therapists available routinely in clubhouses and on the sidelines and in the locker rooms for easy access for these players?
I think that's going to be monumental on many different levels. Now, there might be athletes, especially with where we are right now, who don't feel comfortable going to those people for one reason or another. And so they might seek outside resources. But I think, again, people can pick up on that authenticity. So if your organization authentically is offering these holistic health services, mind, body, soul, whatever it is, that's going to make a difference, right? If you have that culture within your organization, versus like it's instead of like a um oh yeah, we hired somebody, they're here, great, like, but if you see them, if you're comfortable with them, if you get to know them, and again, this is all going to be on the individual too, and it's going to be on the atmosphere. Does this place feel safe? I know this person is here, but do I feel safe enough in this environment, and do I feel safe enough with that person to go and use them? But either way, I think it's a really good thing, because even if they choose not to use that help within their organization, maybe they'll say, okay, at least I feel like validated and okay, and giving myself permission to seek help elsewhere.
So we already talked about friends and teammates, and then we talked about family members. How can coaching staffs create safe spaces within their teams? Do they have to hire a third party therapy option, or can they, as a coaching staff, come together and say, we'll help you as much as we possibly can? I mean, which is the better option, do you think?
It depends on the organization. It depends on your coaching staff. It depends on you. It depends on your availability of resources. Not every program at every level has the resources available to bring in somebody on a regular basis, but you might be able to bring in somebody to do workshops. You might be able to get worksheets. I think at the end of the day, the coaches still have a job to do in terms of working with athletes to play the sport, right? To make that position. So I always say the locker room is not a therapist's office. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean that we have to create a space and we have to have clear definitions of, again, like, this is my role. And as a coach, like, I'm not going to downplay. As a coach, I might say, like, look, this is a really serious, I might not make it an entire practice or an entire team meeting about mental health every week. I mean, maybe I do. Okay, that's awesome. But maybe I don't do that. And maybe I am able to say, like, listen, I just want you guys to know, like, even here, even though we're doing drills and I'm writing you and I want you to do your best and I know we got to win this game, whatever the situation might be, because that's my job as a coach, as a sports coach, is that I want you to know that if something is going on and things are not okay, that my office is open. Or if it's not your office, here's where you can go. That's what I mean. Like, it has to be dependent upon your your organization. And I think, we get into a kind of a dangerous spot when we think the head football coach has to also be a psychologist. That's kind of, to me, that's kind of a dangerous space, because sort of knowing your lane and knowing who, I mean, creating that space where you're open and you're making it okay for people to not have a bad day and, like, go and get help and say, hey, I need help. Who can I go to? That's awesome. But not playing that necessarily that part either, but like, okay, here's how I can get you the right resources. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So, what as an athlete do you do if your coach is not receptive to your request for mental health help?
You don't stop. You go get on Google, find somebody like me, find whoever, and call this. If you're really struggling, call. NAMI has a health on 24/7 hotline that you can call if you're really in a crisis. You can go to somebody else that you trust. That could be a parent. It could be a teacher. If it's a coach, it's not a coach. It could be a family member. It could be your priest or your you know um, forgetting the other word right now, but anyways, somebody that you feel safe with, again, that you can go. But I wouldn't say, like, just because somebody is kind of like not the best person for you to go to, because then everyone's not going to be the best person for you to go to. That's just the way life works. So, but don't stop, right? So look for somebody who can help you, because there are people. Again, you have Hall of Fame Behavioral Health as a perfect example. You can call that crisis hotline or that concierge hotline that they have and say, hey, I'm really struggling in this situation. Is there a program or a provider or whoever it might be that might be able to help me, or do you have other suggestions for resources? So that's why I think these programs are so important, because you might not, even if your coach is like, says, oh yeah, come to me, maybe for whatever reason you don't feel safe doing that again, then look for other resources.
So, let's also talk about the ability to contact that line. Is it just
Yeah.
for football players or is
No,
it for any athlete?
it's for any athlete. It's for family members of athletes. It's for basically anybody. I'm looking up the number right now so I can give it to you, but it's
Yeah.
basically anybody who wants that, who's either an athlete or somebody who supports an athlete who needs that help. You can call that concierge line, and I'll actually give it to you. It's 866-901-1241. That's 866-901-1241. Or you can go to their website, which is HOF as in Hall of Fame, BH as in behavioral health.com. So HOFBH.com. And you can find all the phone numbers and contact information and everything there.
And is there anything else that you wanted to talk about during this interview? I know that you said you had to go at like 11:50.
Yes. Yeah, I have to go.
So we're getting close to that.
Are we already? Wow.
I mean, it's 11:38, but I figure I'll I'm I've concluded the questions I wanted to ask you. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about regarding where the behavioral health program is going, or just the fact that it's the first one that's related to a Hall of Fame that is doing the kind of work that it's
I
doing?
Yeah, I think it is the first one that is affiliated with a Hall of Fame, which is super, super cool. I mean, the players associations, to my knowledge, at least in basketball and football, have started to create these mental health arms of their programs. But this is a little bit broader in scope, I think, again, to my knowledge. And I think that I'm so excited to be, yes, to be a part of it, but to really see how this is going to help people, because the people that are behind this program are so invested and so compassionate. And it's really, really, I think, just an incredible additional resource for people who need to go to somebody who gets it, essentially. And I think that it's totally just, and even like the partner centers throughout the country, everyone is there to help. No one is judging. No one is, whether you're judging because you think you're going to be judged because of financial need, whether you think you're going to be judged because of how you're feeling, or your level in life, whether you're, a high impact professional, or you're this Hall of Famer, athlete, wherever it might be, that we're just, man, we're just people. And so just being another resource for people and allowing them to come from that space that I think we're still emerging from, of this don't be weak, don't be soft, that type of stuff, into learning how to, again, meld those two of mental toughness and mental wellness.
I love that. I love that quote. So what do you think that the other Hall of Fames can implement regarding a program similar to this one?
Oh my gosh, you know what? I don't, again, I don't know much about other Hall of Fames and sort of where they're at, whether they
Well,
have these
let's
kind of
just kind of
programs now.
speculate. I mean, what would you like them
Speculation
to
is
look
dangerous.
like?
I think, honestly, I think anything that, how do I answer this? Because I think there's a lot of really, I think we have a long ways to go. But I think there's a lot of really good things happening. And I think, I don't know about other Hall of Fame programs, but I just think in terms of being a service to an athlete, we have to look at them as the whole individual and not just the athlete and the physical parts of them that make them a good athlete. So, and we have to set them up to not just win games, but win at life. Because when you're happy off the field, off the court, out of the locker room, whatever you might want to call it, when you are able to walk through those challenges and obstacles, which are inevitable, by the way, it doesn't matter where you come from, we all have challenges and obstacles that we all have to deal with. So when you're able to learn how to walk through those things and step forward, instead of, let me eat my emotions, let me sit on this traumatic experience that I have, um because I don't have space to deal with it. But when you're able to, again, look at the whole athlete, I think that even that physical performance becomes better. I think it's so, gosh, I think it's so important to really, again, just address that the whole, not just their physical needs, all of their needs. And if there's a way for Hall of Fame programs or any other program out there to do that, athlete or not, I think we have to continue to move in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're getting better at talking about athlete mental health
Mhm.
because these professionals are coming out and saying, I'm tired of hiding it.
Right.
I need help. I need my story to resonate with people, and I know that it will. And
Mhm.
so it takes those kind of athletes to make change, and then it comes to us as the fans, the spectators, to move the content and move the dialogue along. And I think
Right.
that so far we've done a good job, and it's programs like behavioral health that start that journey.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is that as an athlete, you have a lot of pressure on you. You're sort of looked at this role model automatically, whether you want that or not. You have, you're sort of looked at as sort of like this superhero or like superhuman because you're on this team, and especially at the higher levels and doing things that most average people can't do, or they're just not willing to put in that work to do whatever it might be. Most of the time, it's just like an elite skill set, and so we put these. They're just put on such pedestals. So from a like a you and me consumer standpoint to see like these athletes who we for lack of a better way sort of idolize and who we think are just super tough to say look like Dak Prescott, I'm struggling too, like I went through this really hard time, I had to get help, but also for the athletes themselves to know that yeah, you are in a unique position and you do have a lot of pressure on you probably, and you do have a lot of eyeballs on you, so how do you deal with that effectively? How do you um, do a better job for yourself? Uh, I think that's that having those conversations. I think we're moving in the right direction. I don't
So
think it's like we solved it, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
let's close it out. We've talked about the teammates, we've talked about the family, we've talked about the coaches.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the spectators and how they can create a better atmosphere for athletes to come out and talk about these feelings that they've been having. I mean, social media can be brutal. How
Yeah.
can
You know what? I think
how can we help move this conversation along from a spectator and a fan perspective?
honestly, people know right from wrong. So if you're going to go, I think as athletes, this is something that I work on with coaching too. Social media has to be treated like a business, period. Right? Like we can't like there's going to be people on there that are going to say things and you cannot control whether they say things good or bad, right? You just have to be willing to sort of stay in, as I use the football term, stay in the pocket. You have to be willing to sort of be where you are and really get, that's a piece of mental toughness, is not allowing these people's criticisms to derail you or get you into like these Twitter wars, like honestly. So but I think as spectators, like like again, what's right or wrong, and I feel like if you really have and part of sports, to be honest with you too, is sort of like having a little fun and like having jabs and sort of like so blah blah blah, like because you're rooting for your team, and so maybe you don't like so and so because they elbowed someone, I don't know, but you know what I'm saying, like. So, but I think, like probably what's taking it too far. Probably throwing a water bottle at somebody at a game is not a good idea. Dumping popcorn on somebody, probably not a good idea. That passes that line of overly disrespectful. And so, like, I can't tell the average person what to do to change their life because they're probably gonna do what they're gonna do. But I think um I think, and even with Naomi's case, we saw a lot of people come out and be really supportive of her. And you've seen people come out and be really critical of her. And that's why it's important for her that she is, regardless of that, authentic to her needs. And I think that's really what it comes down to, because you can't control spectators. And so I can't sit here and say, I'm not going to like point my finger, oh, stop sending those nasty tweets, stop yelling those obscenities at these players from the sideline and taking it too far by saying like really nasty things. You either, what's right or you don't know what's right. I can't help you on that. But so you get what I'm saying? Like, um, I think, I think just in general, in life, we can do a better job of being respectful of one another, athlete, neighbor, whatever.
I think that that is a great way to end it. Is there one more time, we have a couple more minutes. Is there anything
Sure.
else that you wanted to talk about that you think that I need to know to better tell your story? Is there anything else that we can wrap up by answering?
Um, I just think there's a couple things that I really love in terms of if someone is out there and they watch this and they are themselves struggling and it feels insurmountable. It feels hopeless. You feel like you've lost that fight, like you're losing that fight. You don't want to fight anymore. You're tired. I get it. I've been there. I know people who have been there. And I think as insurmountable as things might seem sometimes it's just temporary, and hard times are temporary. Hard times are inevitable. Everybody goes through it. But they're not to diminish what somebody might be experiencing, but to understand that there are better days ahead. There is help available that, and I heard somebody say once, and I love this, that you've already survived 100% of your hardest days. And I love that because it's true. Now it can make it hard to still like, okay, but sometimes I might not feel like I'm going to survive this day, but you will. And just reach out, because programs, again, like coaches like me, programs like the Hall of Fame of Behavioral Health, resources like what you're providing are proof that there are people that actually like genuinely really care about helping you find that brighter day. So we'll leave it at that.
I think we'll leave it at that. I think that that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much, Misty, for sitting down with me. This episode will come out in 3 weeks, so
Okay.
I'll message you, and then can you also either email me or direct message me a picture that I can use for social media?
Yeah.
Awesome. And then you already gave us the phone number to call as well as the website to get more information.
Yeah.
And I think that if I have any other questions, I don't think that I will, but if I do, I'll just text you or email you, and we'll I'll see you in, I think, 3 weeks. It'll be
Okay.
posted.
All right. Yeah. Just let me know what else you need, and I will get you that information.
Awesome.
And if anything comes up between now and then, just let me. Is it? Do you post it like this as a video and that's the whole podcast, or just you sort of like piece things together? Do you edit
Yeah,
it?
so I will edit the entire thing. So we've gone about 50 minutes. So I'll edit all of your individual answers out and then I'll narrate to them. So I'll
Oh,
basically tell the story of you and how you got to this point, the behavioral health program, how to find a safe space. I mean, kind of the overarching topics that we've talked
okay.
about. That's what I will gear the story toward, because I
Cool.
think that those things are going to be really helpful for someone listening and they're going to resonate with the audience that I have.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. Right. So
Yeah,
that anyways, that's the whole purpose of doing these things. So
exactly.
even if it's one person that you start to sort of change their mindset around these things, it's a win.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I hope you have a great rest of your day.
you, Julia. You too. I will send, like I said, I'll send that info over to you
Awesome.
and we'll be in touch.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.